Goddamn lightweights. Yo, what is up guys, this is Tyranic Swine here and welcome to another game review, and this time I am reviewing Sunset Overdrive. This is a game that was made by Insomniac Games and was only around mainly on the Xbox One as an exclusive for when the new console released. And for a new exclusive, I must say, Sunset Overdrive isn't too bad for an exclusive. Now the story begins with you with your randomized made character, since you can customize your character to look any way you want, is tossed into a city that is being overrun by mutants called the OD because of a specific product that has made everyone turn into them. And it is your job to get out of the city alive with all the survivors you find. And that is practically the premise of the story, along with the fact that there's the secret corporation bullcrap that's usually along with these kind of things. But that's pretty much the gist of the story. You have to fight a load of mutated humans just to escape the city from them, and then try and take down the secret corporation that started this whole thing in the first place. Now, the game, I will say, the plot and story is not, for this kind of game, is not exactly the best. But what this game mainly relies upon is comedy, really. It's not if you're here for story, don't really bother. But if you're here for a lot of comedy, like the sort of Deadpool fashion, which is fourth wall breaking a lot, and even cliches about other games and other modern day trends that happen, this is going to be your kind of game. So, because the game mainly relies on cliches, comedy quotes, and a lot of other things to keep you going and to keep you interested in the game. And honestly, I will say the cliches and the comedy quotes in the game aren't actually pretty well done, I'd say. It kept me interested in the game, and it even made me laugh a bunch of times, which is definitely what it should be doing, and it did it pretty well. Now also, the characters in this game aren't really the best either. They too are like the specific cliche type characters you get in this kind of game, but they hold up pretty well throughout the game. They keep you going, but really in the end you don't really remember who they are very, like, straight after a few days you finish the game. So if you're looking for character development, you're in the wrong place too. But since the characters are mainly used for comedy, they do that well too. So overall, the story and characters aren't particularly done well, but for the type of game it is, they suit it. They pretty much suit it. So yeah. So the story and characters could have been done better, but for the setting of the game, it was done alright. So let's get down to the mechanics of the game. Now, there is no running in the game, but pretty much you won't need it, since most of the time you'll be grinding on rails, bouncing around a lot, and pretty much even sort of gliding around the city, really. Running is not really necessary in this kind of game, since it's a lot more interesting how you travel around the world in this game, since it's a lot more acrobatic and more flexible, I'd say, than most other games that are open world. You kind of feel a bit like a sort of superhero in some sort of way, and I kind of like the way the game works with how you move around and everything. How you can traverse around the world by rail, by bouncing on things, or by running across walls. It actually felt pretty damn nice for once. It felt a bit more retro compared to some of the newer games these days. It felt like it had a bit of a taste from the old days with the mechanics of the way things were. And it was actually really fun to move around everywhere with it, and it always kept the fighting fun as well. Not only that, there is quite a lot of other things as well in this game. There is a ton of weaponry that you will find, but have to buy. You either have to buy them from the store, or you unlock them from certain missions. And there is actually quite a wide variety of weaponry in this game. More than I thought there was going to be. I thought there wasn't going to be that many weaponry, but there actually is quite a lot. And they go up to like 5 levels of progress. So, and they get more powerful each time. But some weaponry take longer than others. Mainly the starting weaponry take a long time to fully upgrade, while the ones you buy can get up to level 5 very quickly, which was really weird. Now, not only that, throughout the game you can upgrade yourself by getting points or badges, which will give you the ability to unlock certain abilities that help you, give you advantages against either the enemy, or give you make you unlock style points easier, which is what makes you become, since there is a style meter in the game, the more it goes up, the more powerful your effects can become. And getting these badges will help you upgrade those abilities over time. Not only that, there's also amps, which will give the character itself certain abilities, or it'll give the weapon you are using certain abilities to make things a lot more easier for you, and will either have an effect on either certain kind of enemies. Since some weaponry in the game have different effects on each enemy type, since there's 3 enemy types in the game. There's the ODs, there's scabs, which are practically human mercenaries or survivors that are hostile to you, and then there's the physical bots. Now the OD have their usual, like the normal types. They have the infantry, they have the exploding type, they even have a flying type, they have the tank type, they have a ranged type as well. They even have a respawner type, which is basically a large enemy that can respawn in enemies. And there is actually and there's even an acrobatic type too, which is called a mugger. Now there's quite a nice variety of enemies for the OD, but for the other enemies there really isn't. For the Visco and the Scabs there's a lot less variety. Well, especially towards the Scabs, there's only like 3 types, but the Visco bots, at least there's a little bit more variety to them, but it's mainly not really much different to the OD and the Scabs. So the enemies, I would say they've done them all right, and it keeps you interested, but it's nice to see that each of the weapons has a different effect on the enemies. So mechanics wise, I'd say the game does very well overall. Now, the size of this world. Now this is an open world game, and you pretty much would expect the world to be pretty large. Now this game, compared to other open world games, even compared to Saints Row, is actually pretty small, and has at least 4 areas to go in. You have the factory district, you have downtown, you have the harbour, and then you have the main corporation area, I believe, and it's actually the way the map is styled out is actually pretty nice, I'd say. It looks very cartoon-like, which goes with the game and what its setting is like. So they did that particularly well, and around the entire map there is collectibles to find. And I will say, this is one of those few games where the collectibles actually mean something. Getting these collectibles is actually worth your time, since the more you get, you can actually get amps which will help your character become better and more powerful. But not all these amps are useful in the end, since actually most of the amps, I will say, I didn't entirely use, even those I unlocked over time. But hey, it was fun collecting all the collectibles around the map, and there's about 6 different types of collectibles. There's about 5 different ones that are about 150 each, and then there's 2 other ones which are just like smaller, less important collectibles. And not only that, there's also challenges around the world too, which will help you which depending how well you do, which either gives you a bronze, silver or gold ranking, you can unlock you can gain better rewards which will help you along the way for when you even want to buy amps, weapons, or even clothing. And there's also two different currency. There's two different types of currency in this game. There's Overcharge, which is the drink that basically turns you into an OD, and then there's the normal, the dollar, basically. And the OD is basically, the Overcharge is basically used for buying weapons, and the money is basically used for buying clothing. I don't exactly know why they went for this, but I'm guessing it's so to make it easier for you to get, to make it less difficult what to choose for, since there is quite a lot of weaponry to choose from, and I weren't able to buy all of them in the end. So if you want to get all the weaponry, you better get like gold on every single challenge, which I didn't do, but I got at least some gold. But I will say the customization in the game, there's not, compared to other open world games, there isn't that much either. Especially with the clothing area, you do unlock more over time, but really it's pretty small compared to other open world games that I've played over time. And but it wasn't disappointing, the style of clothing. I will say most of the clothing style was actually pretty decent and kept me going throughout the game, and I came back to the customization area for some times. So they did that part very well, I'd say. Even though there is challenges in the game, some of these challenges do turn into a sort of a defense. There is a sort of a defense challenge where you need to protect these VATs against OD so that you can get better amps, apparently, in the amount, and you have to protect them in the limited time that there is. And you can use different sort of, you can even use your own weapons against the OD, but if you're having trouble, that's because there's a lot of them, and it would be pretty hard to get ammo around the way. And so there's traps to use, which will give you better defenses. And there's a different variety of traps. There's like the ones that get in the enemy's ways, like the sort of the cutting type. There is the type of traps where that you need to activate them yourself. So I find that pretty annoying since I hardly use those. And then there's the turret kinds, which are pretty much the most useful, but do cost up the most energy, since you have to think carefully about what traps you want to put down, because you have a limited amount of energy and each trap has a different amount of energy to be used up, and turrets are the most expensive, usually because they're the most useful. So when you're doing this kind of thing, you have to be careful which kind of traps you want to use and everything. But overall, I really did like the defense challenges where you have to always protect your VAT from the enemies. It was always fun to do these. It was always, at times, quite difficult to hold off the enemy because you'd always either run out of ammo or they get very close to the objective and destroy it. And most of the time, I'd say some of the challenges are pretty good. Some challenges start popping up more if you do a certain mission, like over time you will be able to do a glider mission or a glider challenge, which start popping up early on in the game. And then there's these other challenges where you have to kill as many OD in a certain kind of way. And so I'd say the challenge is quite diverse in this game, despite the amount of them. Not only is there the main missions and the challenges, there's also side quests too. And actually most of these side missions are actually pretty fun. But I will say some of them got pretty boring over time since they got a bit longer throughout the game. But most of the side quests were actually fun to play. Were actually fun to play, and they were pretty enjoyable considering what scenarios happened in them. And that's what I kind of liked about this game, is that there was quite a lot of diversity to the missions in them. It wasn't like do an objective and over again. You actually had some variety to the missions themselves. And so that's what kept me going mainly through the game, since it kept me entertained. But mainly, yeah, but sometimes I will say, like I said, some of the missions were actually pretty boring, I would say, since some of them, if they take too long, I'd say they got boring pretty fast. Since the variety of enemies, this is one of those games where the variety of enemies is, yes, there's quite a bunch of them, but it gets quite tiring pretty quickly with how often they throw in these specific types of enemies during a mission at certain points. and it's like you just need to and the more you get through the game, the easier you can, the easier it is to kill them, because you have certain weapons you can use against that kind of enemy and kill them quickly with it. So yeah. So overall, I think Sunset Overdrive is a pretty fun game to play. If you're looking for a game that isn't heavy on plots and characters, this is kind of your game. Because if you're not really the kind of guy, if you're a guy that loves the Deadpool kind of comedy, Sunset Overdrive does really hit that spot in most areas. And it does actually have a nice diversive world to it, and it doesn't, I'd say it takes about probably 60, depending, it depends on how long it takes you to get the game done, but it took me around 17 to 18 hours to do this game, and that includes the challenges and finding the collectibles and everything, and even doing all the side quests. I practically did mostly everything in the game, and it took me less than 20 hours to do it. So overall, Sunset Overdrive isn't a long open world game, but it definitely keeps you entertained. So I'm going to give Sunset Overdrive 7 out of 10. So, that is my review of Sunset Overdrive, one of the more alright exclusives for the Xbox One's debut as a console, but sadly it's a game that will probably never get a sequel because of the ending and because of the company that made it. So we might never see a sequel to this. You never know, we might do, but hey, I don't think we are. So overall, Sunset Overdrive, I think, was a particularly fun game. It had that very nice Deadpool fourth breaking wall cliche kind of thing. So it was, honestly, I had fun playing it most of the time. So hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Leave a like down below, comment on what you think of the game if you played it, and I will see you guys in the next random video.